Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. How about this? A customer who's allergic to pine trees came to the plant store and started a scene, threatening to close the place. So buckle up, a dose of madness is guaranteed. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. How dare you not warn me that you have plants? I work at a plant store. A plant store, mind you, where one buys plants and the like. You know heading into my store that it's a plant store. It's not like we sell furniture and then, surprise, a plant section. We are 100% plants. So I was baffled today when an irate woman approached my register and complained about our plants. Not the quality or the quantity, but rather their sometimes allergen statuses. She was red with the righteous rage of indignation and political correctness as she shoved her arms into my face, arms that had developed a slight red rash. W. This is ridiculous. You people should have signs up that you sell products that can be highly dangerous to people with certain allergies. Me. What? W. You're pine trees. I'm highly allergic to pine trees. See what they did to me? Thrusts arms for emphasis. Look at this rash. I can go into anaphylaxis. I was just walking out in the trees and rubbed against a pine tree. There should be signs. I could die. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am. Would you like me to call an ambulance for you? W. I could be dead by the time they get here. This is why you need signs. I would never have come in here if I'd known there were pine trees. Right, because you didn't know that a plant store might carry pine trees. At this point, she was showing no signs of going into anaphylaxis. I knew allergies could sometimes be tricky, but in general, what I've learned in nursing school is that pollen allergies usually don't introduce anaphylaxis. Me. Ma'am, if you don't want me to call an ambulance, do you have an EpiPen in case you go into anaphylaxis? W. No. I'm just going home. The Better Business Bureau will be hearing about the lack of signs, and you'll be shut down forever. What should I put on the rash anyway? Me. I would call your doctor. W. You can't tell me? Me. I can't dispense medical advice. W. You people are ridiculous. So now my boss can expect an email about our lack of signs, warning people of dangerous allergens, and all I can think about is my own allergy to shellfish. I never go down to the fish market, touch their lobsters, then complain that there's no signs about food allergies. It's a fish store. There's going to be fish there. Just like a plant store is going to have plants. And our second story. Entitled parent claims a medical emergency is no excuse for canceling his free demo. This actually happened on one of my days off, and I heard this from my coworkers that were there to witness it. So I can't say all the details are accurate, but I know the broad strokes of the story are true. A few years ago, I worked at a little shop that's best described as a retro toy store. It sold all kinds of old toys, but its bread and butter were marbles. In order to get people in the door, we had glass artists come in and demonstrate on how they make marbles by hand. One of these glass artists was also one of the store's co-owners. Being a natural showman, he learned how to work with glass just so he could do the demos himself and put on a show for his customers. These demos were, of course, free, and as I'm sure we all know, when you offer something for free, that's when the CBs start coming out of the woodwork. One morning when we were setting up for the day, we got a call from the co-owner's wife. Apparently, he'd suffered a heart attack and was currently in the hospital. Everyone was understandably concerned, but his wife assured us he seemed to be doing fine at the moment. She went on to explain that he would need to take some time off and he definitely wouldn't be coming in that day. Once we got over the initial shock, we started figuring out who would need to do what to make up for his absence. The biggest and most immediate issue for the store was that he was scheduled to do the marble making demonstration for that day. The other co-owner called the other glass artist to see if they could fill in for him at the last minute, but they were unavailable. So with no other options left, she decided to cancel the demonstration for that day. Unfortunately, it was the middle of summer, our busiest time of year. Before the store was even open, there was a line of people outside the door waiting to see the first demonstration. We opened up and very politely explained to everyone waiting that we wouldn't be having any demos that day because the owner had a medical emergency that morning and wasn't able to come in. And almost everyone was completely understanding and sympathetic. They still came in, did some shopping, and we made sure to demo plenty of toys and games for the kids to play with. Things actually went pretty smoothly for most of the day, all things considered. That's when the CB arrived. In walks a man with his wife and 5 children. He pushes through the other customers to the counter where my coworker is stationed and demands to know when the next demo is starting. My coworker politely tells him what we've been telling other customers all day. Sorry, sir, but the owner had a medical emergency and wasn't able to come do the demonstrations today. So unfortunately, we've had to cancel them. But you're free to take a look around the store if you'd like. We have some other games your children can try in the other room. He wasn't having it. He starts going off on my coworker about how he and his whole family drove all the way from Maduka to see how marbles get made, and that it isn't fair that they don't get a free demo. He then starts asking things like, "Is the owner the only one who does it? Can you get someone else?" My coworker explains to him that we tried and that no one was available. Our manager was nearby helping other customers, but he was still keeping an eye on the situation, ready to handle things if my coworker decided to call her over. That's when she heard the CB say something that pushed her over the edge. I don't know what his exact words were, but it was something to the effect of, "How bad could this medical emergency even be?" As soon as she heard that, she immediately marched over to him and said, "Sir, I don't think you heard her earlier, so let's make this very clear. The owner had a heart attack this morning. That's why he couldn't come in. That's why we aren't able to do demonstrations today. I'm very sorry if that's an inconvenience for you." There was a moment of stunned silence while the CB took some time to process what had just happened. He looked around at the other customers, who were looking at him. He looked at his family, who were all looking at him. Then, in a huff, he collected his kids and stormed out. And our last story. Aunt takes advantage of my grandparents and my mom's pregnancy to steal our house. Backstory. My dad has an older sister we'll call EA, entitled Aunt, and always, even as a child, my grandparents treated her like an angel and treated my dad like a piece of crap. For example, when my dad was in college, he wore clothes that had holes that were about 3 inches wide, and the tradition in China is that you get a lot of new clothes in the new year. His mom told him that they were going to get him a brand new coat for the winter, and my dad was really excited. A few days before the New Year's, though, his parents said that they can't get him a coat. The coat they were going to give him costs 1,000 yuan, $143. But can you imagine where that money went? EA's frickin' boyfriend. How can your son like that? Here's something worse. The coat they gave the boyfriend was 2,000 yuan. You could just have split the dang money so they could both have new coats. The second my dad was out of college, he started working his butt off. He was able to give his parents money every year, even when they treated him like crap. Later, finding out that every year, all the money went to EA. But that's a different story. You get the gist. My dad treats his parents really well, and all that effort equals nothing, or it goes straight to EA. Story. For some reason, they hated my dad, mom, me, and siblings. This happened a few years ago when my mom was giving birth to my brother. I didn't realize how bad the story was until a few years ago because I didn't understand. So, I was born in Beijing. My mom was somehow able to foresee that prices in houses were going to go up in there, so she and my dad worked hard to buy as much houses as they can. However, there is a limit to how many houses you can buy in Beijing, but my mom was able to find a loophole. She bought the house with her own money, but put the house under someone else's name. She bought a house and put it under my dad's mom's name. My mom paid for all the renovation. Important later. Fast forward about 4 years. My mom was pregnant with my brother. There's a law in China that says having no more than one baby, so they came to the US to legally have a baby. This is when EA saw her chance. She took advantage of my parents' absence to manipulate my grandparents, telling them to put the house my mom bought 4 years ago under EA's management. Obviously, my grandparents caved in really easily and transferred it. Luckily, my mom's brother, I don't know how, was able to find out that they had it transferred. Now, we were still in the U.S., so we weren't able to deal with this immediately. My parents called their lawyers to have a court summoned for EA. She took her time and waited for the last warning to finally come to court. She brought my grandparents along too. According to my uncle, she was smirking the entire time waiting for the trial to begin, thinking that our side of the court can't really prove it, while low-key insulting our side of the family. I don't know how to translate this, but she said things like, my brother had always been naughty, probably also passed it down to his children too, or my brother was such a coward he didn't even want to come because he knew I'd win. Then came the sweet revenge. The court first asked EA to talk. She said that the house was bought by grandmother and was then given to her husband, obviously with no proof. Then my uncle with the lawyers took out a record, clearly stating that my mother purchased this house with her own money. I wish I could have seen EA's face, but my uncle described it as dark green and maybe a little purple too. The judge then asked EA if this was true. The judge stated that if she was to lie, she would end up with much worse than just giving the house back. Surprisingly, she still stood her ground and claimed that the house was indeed her husband's, who'd gotten the house from grandmother and paid for renovations. That's where she messed up. My uncle and the lawyers triumphantly took out another paper saying that my mother paid for all the renovations, clearly not my aunt's husband. That's when she broke down like a bee. She started crying, screaming in undecipherable language. She was soon taken to jail for 1 to 2 years. I forgot, but holy crap, she deserved it. Your aunt sounds like a black widow. They usurp and destroy what isn't theirs only to move on to their next victim. Sounds like she got her just desserts. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.